Okay, so talking about accessing the Akashic Records. Right. So I'll be talking from mostly from my experience, right? So you see this Akashic Records, right? In order to access it, you don't go trying to access it. That's the spiritual paradox. See, spirituality is a paradox in its nature. If you want something, you will not have it. But if you focus on something else, something like your spiritual growth and the process of, evolving on a conscious level, as a byproduct, it happens to you, right? So I was not really fascinated about knowing about the Akashic records and stuff. Uh, so when I say accessing the Akashic records, you must understand something. It's not as like people say it is, like where they say there's a book and all this stuff. This is just an analogy. These are just words that are meaningless, that are just thrown around the internet, right? So I'll give you a proper definition of what the Akashic records is really like, and how you actually can use it, right? So the Akashic records is a, you can call it a space. It's not really a space, right? For lack of words, I'm trying my best to explain it. I'm just trying, right? Uh, it's a space where there is wisdom, right? This wisdom is not wisdom from scriptures. It's not wisdom from anything that you pick up in the physical. But if when you have access to it, you have a certain type of knowing, and that knowing, if you go check in scriptures, like in certain holy texts and stuff, you do find that same wisdom in there, which is very strange. And I've done this many times. So it's not a status thing. It's not a status thing where you say, I have access to the Akashic records. This video, the whole purpose of me making this video is for people that are willing to know how can they maybe try to access it. This may have some benefit. This may have no benefit at all to any person, because this is not the way of how to access it. This is more of explaining how this thing actually is in one's experience. That's what I'm just doing here, right? So it's a space where there is an abundance of wisdom, right? There's an abundance of wisdom that you don't need a teacher, right? It's like I've heard this analogy of using like the internet. It's kind of, you can look at it like from that. It's not the internet, but you can look at it like that. Uh, because this is like sort of the best analogy I've heard to actually put into words. Well, that's what I mean. I mean, to find the words to put it in, right? Because a lot of things that I experience, there's no words to explain. But when I listen to certain things or certain people, then it's sort of like, that word sort of is better than the vocabulary I have. So, this is the best words that I can use to actually say something. Otherwise, there's nothing to say. I can just keep quiet about it. So, it's like, you can look at it like the internet, because you see, not as in like it's like the internet, but look at the functionality of the internet. If you want to know something, right? If you want to know something, if you search it, you will get an answer, right, on Google. Now, the Akashic Records works kind of in a similar way. It's where if you think about something, that wisdom comes to you. Like, just say, for instance, right, I'll give you an example. You see, in spirituality, the word sex is looked as a bad thing, right? As a bad thing. When you look at the Akashic records of people who were saints or sages and stuff, specifically if you're walking on a path that's like a monk or a brahmachari, like how I was walking on a path like that. You look at it, it gives you the wisdom from what am I? You see, I'm not this physical body, right? I'm not this physical body. I am a being. I'm conscious awareness, right? I'm awareness. And this awareness has nothing to do or is not related to this physical body at all. This body is a materialistic body that is born here and will die and stay here. So what one is looking as the word sex is just an act for the continuation of the genetic material that has been continuing throughout millennia. You see, there's this thing called ancestral math. I saw this thing recently on, I think it was on a picture or something like that. It was centered on social media. You see, right now you're sitting there. In order to have you, there's two people have to be, your mother and your father. Then to have your mother and your father, there was 4 people. So it's your grandparents for your mother and grandparents for your father, and it goes all the way back to like about a couple generations. And then when you look back at the whole thing, there's like about 5,000 people's DNA in you, and it goes more, like, you know, the more deeper you go, the more the number increases. So it's just, you know, it's just a continuation of the living organism, which is a natural process of survival. So if one in their life has to get married or something like that, then, or they're faced with some issue whether they can't overcome, or they don't necessarily have the ability to see clearly of how to actually overcome certain things in life, the Akashic Records can be a very valuable thing, because now in your life you have the necessary tool to see the truth of what things really are. You see things as they are, not as what your mind is making up, not as what other people have put into you, not as their belief overwriting your decision making. It's not that. You actually see everything for what it truly is. And you see, that is a very, very powerful tool to have access to if you find access to the Akashic Records. Now, I've heard this one method which I have tried. This was way back, right? This was way back before I had my spiritual awakening. And this, what I'm mentioning is, it's where you realize the insignificance. I think this played a very important part. You realize the insignificant being that you are in this whole entire creation. So every day you do this. You sit in meditation and you zoom out from yourself, from where you are. You zoom out into the city. You're a minuscule, like you're not even a dot, right, in your whole entire city that you live. Then you look at the country. Then you look at the planet. Then you go out of the solar system. You keep zooming out. You can even watch a video on YouTube where they're just zooming out from the earth. So you get like an idea, like a visual, like, you know, practical exercise that you actually can see. And then you constantly remind yourself how insignificantly small you are in this whole entire universe. And we walk around every day thinking that we are some great person, or we walk around, you know, with a sense that all our problems are the biggest in the world. You know, all our problems are like the kings and queens that are ruling us, but it's nothing. It's insignificant. We are going to die. You see, this mortality, that when this mortal nature starts to set in, like within yourself, when you understand that I'm a living entity here on this planet for a short time and I'm going to die, right? I have a limited time here. and you zoom out, you do that two things, you start to realize that in this whole entire universe, there seems to be an intelligence that is functioning in every single thing. And if you can constantly recognize that this intelligence that is functioning in every single thing, right, has been controlling everything and making sure that everything is in perfect order from the beginning of time. Now, that intelligence, if you constantly recognize that intelligence, you start to see that intelligence, eventually you start to gain access to that intelligence. But you gotta destroy the ego. You have to destroy the ego, the egoic self, the self that you have built, that you're an important person, that you're a valuable person on this planet. You know, we just like every other life. Every other life is equal. There's no high, low kind of a thing. So this is you gotta look at exercises that one can do to make the ego small, or not even make the ego small. You can't exist in this body without an ego. That is impossible. But there has to be some identity, but the smaller you keep the identity, and the more you limit the identity, then the more you have to know. The more you understand that you don't know, the more that you will know.